Have you ever owned a comic book and then want to get it certified graded, but you didn't know which company to use because there's so many of them and you don't know which one's the best ones, which one's the worst ones, and which one will actually do a good job for what they claim to do? Well, in this video, I'm going to answer all those questions. I'm going to break down each and every grading comic company that exists and talk about the pros, the cons. I'm also going to go through the website, teaching you how to use it, what's available, also tell you the prices, the turnaround times, show you the custom labels that they have to offer. And then at the end of this video, I will also give you my opinion backed by data on what I think of each company and what I think the pros and cons are and which one you should use. So first up was we got CGC. This stands for Certified Guaranteed Company, and this was started all the way back in 2000. And they just hit 10 million graded collectibles that they do. Now they do all sorts of stuff. They do trading cards, not sports cards, obviously comic books, posters, and a bunch of other random stuff as well. But they were kind of the first to do this for comic books, and they are also the largest and the biggest. They control most of the market. So first, let's jump on their website and show you how to use their website and see kind of like what their website looks like. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them because some companies don't even exist anymore. Okay, so we're going to go through CGC's website. This is kind of what it looks like on the front page, cgccomics.com. As you see, they have celebrating 10 million collectibles graded. That's pretty cool. But collectibles could be comics, it could be cards, it could be anything. And it has a little scroll menu that kind of tells you about different things. They're going to be at MegaCon, things like that. They are hiring. You can apply now as a little button, all sorts of things like that, you know. And these have little kind of cool graphics. You scroll down and it zooms over. That's pretty much it. You know, your classic stuff down at the bottom, contact, all this kind of stuff. So, you know, pretty nice, okay website. Now, they have a bunch of tabs up here that kind of go through everything. They have a chat board, resources, news, a bunch of things. How to submit, we'll go through that in a little bit, which the services and fees, I'll go through that later. They have their pressing. They also do trading cards. And they talk about their grading. Their grading process is pretty much the same as everyone else on a 10-point scale. That's pretty standard now. But let's go through how to submit. So first we want to do, let's see how we can submit. You have to become a CGC member. Paid members just start at $25 a year, which is not that bad. You get other benefits such as tracking free grader notes on your submissions and other submissions. So you get free grading notes. So yeah, track your patches, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to the submission form. So this is how you submit. You can look at your previous statuses for forms. But let's say we're doing comics. So we'll go here, comics online form right here. And we'll start a new order. So here we go, new order. And it's pretty just point and click. So we're going to do a comic book right here. Select your method. We'll mail it in, or you can mail it in or drop it off at a show, things like that. You can do signings. And we're going to go for mail it in. Now, what are we mailing it in for? So we got pressing, grading, reholder, restoration, removal, restoration if you want that, things like that. So we'll go grading. This is just for a standard stuff. Okay, this is all their agree, fine, move ahead. This is basically standard things like that. Okay, so now we select the tier. And here's where the tier is. Now these prices will be different because I have a dealer license, so therefore it's going to come with a discount. So if you have a modern comic, let's say you have a modern, we'll click modern. Do you want to fast track it? Do you want to pre-screen? Pre-screen just means that, hey, I want at least at 9.8. If it doesn't get a 9.8, send it back. And they charge a $8 fee for that. High-res imaging, these are add-ons. You don't have to have these. So we'll add comic. We don't want that stuff. So then you're here. So this is what you do. Okay, let's pretend it's Amazing Spider-Man. What number? Let's say number 800 because I just did that. Okay, so here's all the 800s. The Del Auto version. Okay, here we go. So you click the one that you want, pops up, you just type them in. You know, I didn't capitalize these, it kind of just did it on its own. How many do I have? I have one. Declare the value. Now this is for, now if you look in here, this is for insurance purposes. So let's declare a value. Let's say it's 250 bucks. Let's say it's like a 9.6. From here, we can do a custom label for $5, and these are the ones that they have. They have more than this, but this is probably just ones that are related to Spider-Man 800. We don't want that. We'll add to our cart. Boom, done. That's that simple. Then you do the review the cart, all that kind of stuff, and you're good to go. Next, we got PGX, and this was started in 2002, so a few years after CGC, and this stands for Professional Grading Experts. Okay, so let's go through PGX. This is pgxcomics.com. Here's their main page. As you can see, it's more of just like a static image on a background, so not as interactive, and just got a bunch of stuff kind of pasted all over the place, talking about whatever it's talking about. You got your links down here to some social media, stuff like that. Services they offer, fast turnaround times, cleaning, pressing, things like that. So yeah, let's get into submitting your book. So this is how you submit your book. You just click submit book, and then it tells you a bunch of stuff about it, way too much information. And then it tells you basically what the tiers are and how much it's going to cost for each book. It tells you the different speeds, things like that, if you want to press them, clean them, things like that. And you just have to keep scrolling until you get to this thing where it says interactive submission form. You click that, and this is where you put in your account number. I don't have an account with them. And then you put in your name, Bob Son, I don't know. And then your email and all this kind of stuff. And then you just kind of type it what it is. Say it's Amazing Spider-Man, number 800, grading. I want it to be modern, pressing, none, signature, none. Okay, $14. Then let's do Superman 100. Okay, let's do standard, $20. Goes like that. You keep going down, more and more and more. Add more rows. There's more rows. Kind of adds it up for you, which is kind of nice. And you just type it in. Select the different things you want. Oh, it's signature. Okay, there's 3 signatures on this book. Things like that. Pre-screen or recase. You put in your minimum grade. I want at least 9.8. Things like that. And then you print this off and you put it in your package, and then you mail it to them. And so then when they open the package, that's how they get it. Next was RGA, that stands for Retrograding Authentication. And this was started in 2009. But they no longer really grade comics. It might have been just a very short window that they did. But we can take a look at the website and see kind of like what's going on. Okay, so Retrograding doesn't really grade comics anymore. They probably did for a very brief time, a long time ago. But this is their website. It's pretty basic. I think it's still operational, but that's about all it is. It's closed due to COVID, will open in 2023, so it's not even open anymore. Next we got is Vault. This was started in 2012. I don't think they're around anymore. They never really had a website, and they just had a Facebook, and they haven't posted in a while. I don't have any, so you can take a picture of what it looks like, but we can look at their website and kind of see what they kind of were all about. So here is Vault Grading. They don't even have a website. They only have a Facebook, and the last post they made was in 2016. So that's about all. Here's a couple books by them. Not really much going on. I don't think they exist anymore. Next we got is Halo, and they started in 2013. I don't really see them that often because they're out in Australia, so a lot of people just don't send books to them because of shipping costs. Also, their website isn't that great, and the last time they updated was in 2021, so not even really sure if they still exist anymore. Okay, so here is Halo. It's a grading company. They're out in Australia. It's not even worth sending because they're so far, and there's not much going on with their website either. If you wanted to send, you literally just mail them comics. There's no sign up or nothing like form to fill out or anything like that. This is really just about it. They have a price list from 2021, so I don't even know if they do it anymore. This is the newest thing that they have. Next we got is MCG, and this stands for Midwest Comics Grading, and this started I think around 2014. There's not too much information on them. I think what they were is there's a website called Comic Skins, which I'll talk about more later, where they will basically give you all the equipment you need to grade your own comics and put in a slab and put in all that stuff you need, labels, whatnot. And I think they kind of use something similar to that, but they're really not around and very few actually exist out there. So there's not really much to say. Their website doesn't even exist anymore and or work. I had to go on a Wayback Machine to see what they even look like, and it wasn't very good. Next, we got CBCS. This stands for Comic Book Certification Service. This started in 2014, and it was actually started by one of the people that started CGC, went off and made their own company, Steve Borak. I did an interview with him. And then later they got bought out by Beckett, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. They're the second largest comic book grading company. A lot of people use them, mostly a lot of times more for modern stuff, but also for vintage as well. Let's check out the website. Okay, so now we're going to look at CBCS. It's cbcscomics.com. As you can see, this is their homepage. They're hiring. Seems like everyone's hiring. You can scroll through, talks a little bit about themselves, what they do. They have their different services, pressing, verified signatures, original art, things like that. Go down, find out more stuff that you want to know about. And as you can see here, they have a lot of links to Beckett because Beckett bought them out. And if you're not familiar with Beckett, it's like a sports grading card company and a price guide and a bunch of other stuff that Beckett does. There's their information right there. If we want to look at turnaround times, we can look at turnaround times here. It's about 45 weeks because this is in business days for their lowest tier. If you want to submit a comic, so let's see how we can submit a comic. So you have 2 ways of doing it. There's the old way of doing it, which is print CBCS form. So you can do this form and you can kind of just fill it out manually, print it off, send it with your comics. This is kind of the old way they did stuff, but if you want to do the new way, which is, puts it into your account online so you can follow the shipping process, all sorts of stuff. You have an idea of what's going on with it 24/7. You can do this, start your submission, submit here. Yes, we're going to add a comic down below at the bottom. And here we go. Let's do Amazing Spider-Man. Okay, so it pops it up. This is a little different than CGC. Pops it up. We'll click that one. Publisher, it's Marvel. Yep, there's the publisher. Variant, none. Let's do, 800, 2018. And then, if you're not familiar with the year and stuff like that, it's usually on the inside of the comic. Declared value, okay, let's say it's 250. Do we want to screen it, meaning it needs a bare minimum of this grade? No. Here's some additional stuff. Image on there, International Comic Raw grade, things like that. So over here, you pick if you want to speed it up. Express, it's a little faster. Express Plus, even faster. And then Super Express. That's the same thing as, fast track, I guess, so to speak. But we don't want any of that stuff. We just want standard new comic book. That's it. $17. You save, blah, blah, blah. Boom, it's added. You want to add another one? Here we go. Let's add another one. So next we got is EGS, and this stands for European Grading Service and started in 2015. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait, that's not what EGS stands for. There's actually 2 companies called EGS. This one is over, I believe, in Germany somewhere. So we can look at their website, but it's all in German. I translated it. It worked okay. But it's more for people that live out there. The labels are mostly in German and the website's in German. And also the way they accept payment is also in German. So it won't really apply to this, but if you're out there, maybe it works for you. But let's look at their website, see what's going on. Okay, so here is EGS's website. This is European Grading Service. I think it's German. It looks like it's all in German. But I guess if you're over in Europe, maybe you have some experience with this. I don't. And it looks like they grade cards, all sorts of stuff. So we're not really going to go into this because we can't even read this, even if we wanted to. It's in a different language. But this is kind of give you an idea of what their website looks like. Last on the list is EGS, stands for Expert Grading Service. And this was started in 2018. This is the new one on the block. Most of their slabs are made up by that company I called Comic Skins. That's how they're designed. You can buy them, make them yourself. I heard that they're trying to get their own custom cases, but right now they pretty much just have the same cases that you can buy online yourself and grade it yourself. They also put in this little certification that talks about sometimes the grader notes on it and the serial number, but it's separately attached, so anyone can just throw this away or do whatever they want with it. So let's look at their website and see what they're all about. Okay, so here's EGS's website. This is the other one. This is the more recent one. established in 2018. Has a banner that scrolls across. Not much else on there. These aren't even links. You have a link to his YouTube. That's pretty much about it. And then, obviously you can have a gallery, services and prices, things like that. If you want to submit your book, it's right here. You can submit online or in person. So it's very similar to PGX's, the way they do it. Type in your name. That's Bob Bobson. Is that what I am today? Bob Bobson. And then you just, Spider-Man 800. Condition. Sure, we'll call it that. And then you choose what you want. Let's do choice modern, pressing, no pressing, signature, pre-screen, none of that stuff. Adds it in there, things like that. Print this out and then submit it. And then that way they have it on their end. And then you'll send it in your little package and then they'll get it. So now let's go through how much they charge for all their services and also their turnaround times, which means how long it takes for them when you send a book to them to send it back to you. Now, they have different tiers, each company, and they're kind of always a little different how they do things, but I try to come up with the best way to kind of fit them all together so they all kind of make sense. Now, we are only going to go through CGC, CBCS, PGX, and EGS. The other ones we're not really going to dive into because they're either not around anymore or really just not worth talking about. So let's jump into how much this costs. So first we got is modern tier. At CGC, it will cost you about $24 and it'll have a 102-day turnaround time. But you can also add $15 to fast track it and it'll speed it up to 39 days. PGX is $14 for about 35 days for a modern. And then CBCS is $20 for a 224-day turnaround time, so a lot more. And then EGS is about $20 for a 60-day turnaround. Both CGC and CBCS have a membership discount of 10% on all their fees. So if you join their membership, you can get fees reduced. So on the low end tier, for $35 to CGC, that has a turnaround time of 223 days, but you can speed that up with a $15 extra for fast track, and that will bring it to 64 days. PGX doesn't have this tier. So CBCS more structures their pricing by the year of the comic, and then you can just pay to speed up that particular year. So they have like new, modern, and vintage. So that's why this one will look a little different. So CBCS for their low tier, which will take 224 days, is either $24 for their modern books all the way up to $300 for their vintage. EGS for their low tier is $25 and that takes 60 days. So for mid-tier, it's $80 and that takes 33 days for CGC. For PGX, depending on the year of the comic, it's anywhere from $20 or $28 for 35 days. CBCS, it's anywhere from $400, $100, or $400, and that's 14 days. And then EGS is $40 for 10 days. The fast way is $130 for 14 days for CGC, $20 or $34 depending on the year for PGX, and that's 12 days. CBCS is either $75, $150, or $500 for 5 days, and EGS is $70 for 5 days. Walkthrough, which is 14 days for CGC, is 3% of the value of the book. PGX is anywhere from $54 to $68 for 3 days, plus 1% fair market value for books over $5,000. And CBCS is either $250, $500, or $1,000, and that's 1 day turnaround time. And EGS is $100 for a 3-day turnaround time. So pretty much across the board, PGX is the cheapest out of all these companies. Next would be CBCS, the next cheapest for modern, if you have the membership. If not, it's tied with EGS. But if you have the membership for either CGC or CBCS, then actually EGS is probably the more expensive in modern category. Overall, EGS has the quickest turnaround times, but they probably have less stuff coming in, so it's easier to hit those turnaround times. On the higher end value books, CGC and CBCS tend to be more expensive, but also they are better for holding investment. I'll talk about more of that later. So let's talk about grading notes. Grading notes are basically when a company grades a book, so they write little notes down. And if you're buying this book off online and you want to see what's wrong with it inside, you'll need the notes. Or if you got this book back and you're like, hey, why'd they grade it, X? Then you'll get the notes. Now, CGC and CBCS both have it really easy on their website. I'll show you how to get their grading notes. But PGX and EGS, they don't have a way to get their notes. I think if you emailed or called them, you might be able to get the grading notes for PGX and EGS. For grader notes for CGC, all you have to do is scroll down to midway through. You got this thing that says verify CGC certification. You pop in the certificate number, hit go, and here you go. It tells you everything you need to know. Action Comics 89, the year, creamed off white. Even here's the notes: light staining to cover, moderate creasing, moderate tears to cover. You can search for a new one over here. Just need the serial number. That is it. But you do need, in order to get these free grader notes on any book they've ever graded, you do have to buy their bottom tier membership, which is $25 a year. For grading notes for CBCS, all you go up here is services, comic book grading, and then you go down to grading notes. It's a tab, search for, you put in a serial number, I already have one brought up, and it looks like this: Action Comics, DC 1957. Tells you if there's a variant, pedigree, 6.0. Let's look at the notes. Back cover detached from staple, small spine, splits, tears, tiny piece at the bottom staple. If it's signed, whatever, 6.0, certified. That's it. That's how you do that. So next, let's talk about the labels, because let's face it, what are these companies really? They give you a plastic with a piece of paper in it and then certify that it's a X grade. So the product that they're really selling is the plastic and the labels and their expertise. So that's a pretty important part of the grading service. So CGC has the most labels. They have tons of custom ones, and they got the rights from Marvel and DC and stuff like that to put them on there. So you can see like Hulk, Spider-Man, X-Men on your case. They also bring in new ones and retire old ones. So they're always coming up with new kind of cool things. They also have different colored labels that dictate what the comic is: unrestored, restored, stuff like that. With CBCS, they have a few colored labels, but they don't have any custom labels with any like figures or superheroes or anything like that on it. Just different colors of their labels. PGX, similar thing. They don't have anything as custom labels as different colors and characters on their label. EGS has a ton of custom labels. You can get all sorts of different colors, gradient, not gradient. They also have some artwork on some of the labels, but since they can't license the characters from like Marvel or DC or anything like that, cost way too much, they kind of have just generic stuff that you'd find online and just paste it in there. So now I'm gonna give you my opinion on what company you should use. I'll give you the pros and cons of each. I'll break down what I think of each company. I've been a comic book dealer for nearly 15 years now. This is what I do, a full-time job. So I'm very familiar with a lot of this stuff. Now ask yourself, what is the reason why you would get a comic certified graded? Well, it usually comes down to protection. You want to protect your comic from the elements, like dropping it, damage happening around, physical damage. You also want to protect it as an investment. So when you go to sell this comic book, you don't have to argue what the grade is, what's going on with it, is there restoration, all this kind of stuff. They take all the guesswork out of that for you. And then you got this comic book right here, and it's like, I have a Superman 13 7.0, and then people can go, okay, that's going to be worth X based on what they want to pay. They don't have to go back and like, well, I think it's actually a 6.0 or this or that, or is there restoration? You don't have to know any of that stuff. So it protects your investment because now you know what you're buying is a legitimate Superman 13 in a 7.0 according to CGC. So whether you like it or not, CGC is the standard. They're the standard for grading. They kind of started all this, so everything will be compared to them. Now you can disagree with the grade, that is fine, but most things are stacked up against CGC. CBCS comes close to CGC in terms of grading. They're very close. I feel like they might be a smidge more forgiving than CGC. Now, that is not to say that you'll send in a book and it will get a lower grade at CBCS and CGC. I see those videos all the time. But you have to think about sample size. You have to think of, okay, that's one book, one grader. You also have to think about what tier are you sending in. Is this a modern, lower value book? Or is this like a top tier book? Like, $100,000, $50,000 comic book. You get different graders based on the tier that you send it, especially with CBCS and CGC. So when I see people on the internet like, oh, I sent this to X company and it got a lower, lesser grade than this company. It's like, well, you sent in one book and it was a newer book and it wasn't that high of value. I send close to 4,000 comic books to CGC every year. I used to send a ton to CBCS back in the day as well. So I'm very familiar with their grading standards. With PGX, they tend to overgrade. Now, you can disagree with me, but any book that I get in and I look at And again, I'm talking more high value vintage comics. I'm not talking modern, lesser value comics. So for this book, for example, I look at this and I was like, yeah, it's not a 6.0. CGC wouldn't give this a 6.0. They probably give it a 5 to a 5.5. And usually when I am buying a PGX book, I automatically know it's going to be less if I crack it out and resubmit it. I just know. I've cracked out tons of PGX books, again, talking high value vintage comics, and I've sent them into CGC and they always come back less. I'll also show you data that reflects all this stuff that I'm talking about. And you can see that CGC books go for more in the same grade than PGX. Same with all the others. EGS, there's no nice way to say this, but they're not very good at grading. Now, again, I've only had a handful of these books, but every single one I've gotten in has been way off. For example, this is not a 9.8. I would call this like maybe a 9.2. Any book that I've ever gotten from EGS has been massively overgraded. I got one and it was a 9.8 and it was like an 8.0. To give you an example, there is 11 spine ticks on this spine for a 9.8. There is also a 1-inch crease right by his face. There's also a blunted corner. Not to mention the back has a bunch of spine ticks as well. I would not call this a 9.8 with all those defects. To me, it's more of like a 9.2. For me, I would never send a book to PGX or EGS. I'd only send it to CBCS and CGC because in the end, what are you really doing? You're projecting your value, and value is in the trust of the company. PGX existed 2 years after CGC, but they have barely any comics up on eBay for sale or sold compared to CGC or CBCS. PGX currently has 6,200 books available for sale. CBCS has 29,000. CGC has 270,000. EGS has 480. Of ones sold, in the past 3 months, EGS has 64 sold on eBay. PGX has 1,300 sold on eBay. CBCS has 8,100 sold on eBay. And then CGC has 150,000 sold on eBay. So as you can see, there's just not that much out there. And you would think with PGX starting 12 years before CBCS that they would have way more of the market share, but they don't. The reason why they don't is because they're not a good company. They're not accurate at grading. They have missed things multiple times. I'm afraid to crack out a PGX book because I'm afraid there's going to be restoration or a missing page in there or something like that, which has happened multiple times. They also had a history back in the day where the owner would grade his own books, sell them online, and he would boost up the grade so he could get more money for them. That tarnished their reputation in the very beginning, and it has never recovered ever since. EGS is on the path the same way as PGX. They overgrade, and the problem is with new people in the industry, they don't know the difference. But then if they ever cracked it out and sold it, or if they tried to sell it online, they'll find that, hey, I bought this as a 9.8 and I did a buy it now and paid top dollar for it. And then they'll go and put it in an auction and it'll go for half the price. And they're like, wait, why? Because the general consensus is just because you don't know how to grade and you don't know much about the company, a lot of other people do. So therefore, they won't buy it. And I have data to back this up. So here we have is a New Mutants 98 and a 9.8. Now it's hard to find a sold comic that encompasses every single one of these grading companies, but I found one. So let's look at it. This is all around the same time. A CGC one sold in auction for $1,875. A CBCS, same grade, 9.8, sold in auction for $1,615. That's down 14% from CGC. PGX, $1,400, down 25%. EGS, one sold for $899. That's down 52% from the same exact grade as CGC. Next, we got a Conan #1. We got a CGC one selling for $1,459 in auction, and a PGX one selling for $831. That is down 43% from a CGC one. Next, we got a Fantasy 15. In the same month, a CGC sold for $43,200, and a PGX sold for 36% less for $27,600. Next, we got a Spider-Man #1. CGC selling for $24,100. CBCS, same time frame, $20,100, down 17%. And last, we got a Turtles #4, second print. A CGC 9.6 in auction sold for $688, and EGS selling for $466 in auction. So as you can see from those data points, is CGC in the same grade will get way more. Because most people know that when you're buying a CGC 7.0, you're getting a 7.0. If you bought this in a 9.8, people know you're not getting a 9.8. You're getting way less than that. So a lot of people don't want to take the risk. So they spend less money, sometimes 50% less money for the exact same grade, because they know if they crack down and send it to CGC, it come back way less. The problem is when you overgrade, it tarnishes your name. This is what happened to PGX, and the EGS is on the same path. CBCS didn't do that. CBCS's grading is very close. That's why they started way later than PGX, but they get almost close to the same price as a CGC graded one. Problem with PGX and EGS is they overgrade. So when you get the book back, you think, oh my gosh, I just got this 9.8, but it's not a 9.8. You can slap a sticker on there and say it's a 9.8, but the reality is it's not, and it's never going to get the same value as a 9.8. So it's not a 9.8. You also have a harder time moving it. So the only way you could do it is throw it in an auction and it'll go for 50%. Yeah, you might be able to throw it up there and put it as buy it now and hope someone comes along and buys it. If it doesn't know the difference, that happens. But the reality is you're going to sit on it much longer. Also, another thing to note is I'm not the only one that thinks this. Heritage doesn't even allow PGX books on their website. You cannot sell a PGX books in their auction. And I guarantee you they won't take EGS either. They will, however, take CBCS and CGC because they trust them. Because in the end, they're trying to look out for their customers. If they're trying to put a book in their auction, even though they're not the grader, it looks bad on them when the customer gets the book and it's like, wait, this was a 9.8? Because they know they bought it through Heritage. So Heritage has to vet other grading companies and only allow the best ones. Another issue with EGS, I did a video on it, is they give you the grader notes on this. Well, this you can just throw away or toss out. And they graded a fake cover, Daredevil #1, as a married cover. They put that on the label, married cover, and then they said incomplete, missing pages. Well, how many pages? 1, 2, all of them? You have no idea because it was on this piece of paper. Well, the seller threw that piece of paper away. And so people were buying this Daredevil 1 thinking it was like, oh, it's just a married cover, which means you take a cover from one book and marry it to the inside of another book, but it's still an original cover. This was a complete fake cover, and they gave it a 1.0. They should have said fake cover on the label, so when you go to sell this book, people know what they're getting, because you could have scummy sellers that just throw this piece of paper away, and then you're thinking you're buying a legit book with just a married cover, but you're not. Reputation is very key in this industry, because if you don't have a good reputation or a good name, good branding, then what's the point of even using that company at all if you're trying to protect your investment? If you just want a slab with a label, you can buy these exact same slabs. They're called comicskins.com, and they will send you this very slab and a label and print out all the information you want, and you slab it yourself. If that's all you care about is having a number in a case, then you can just do it yourself, and you can call it whatever you want. So you really are buying the company's brand and reputation. That is why I can only recommend CBCS and CGC. That is it. I personally use CGC. Why do I use CGC? Because most of my customers want CGC. It makes it so much easier to sell, so much easier to move. It's just, that's what we use. My dad, who still deals in comics, he uses CBCS. Still a great company. You can use either or. I would just not recommend PGX or EGS. The other companies that I talked about, a million other ones that may or may not exist, I can't really say. I wouldn't recommend using those either, because in the end, you get what you pay for. Yes, this might be a little more expensive, CGC and CBCS, but it also protects your investment and protects the comics better. These are better cases. So this is pretty much my professional opinion on all this. I hope this video helps you decide which company you want to use. Use which one you want. Have a great day.